Get to know your LCSO. Information flows as learn and grow. With every episode we gotta know. Oh yeah, LCSO, let's go.
Hello, I'm Sheriff Mike Chapman, and I want to welcome our viewers to the first in a series of podcasts we're going to be doing here at the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office. This is going to be entitled Get to Know Your LCSO. We're going to do a series of these to not only talk about what we do here at the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office, but what our community members do to contribute to what we do here. And then we're going to even go regionally and even maybe nationally as we start discussing some of the topics that impact what we do in law enforcement and our engagement with the community. I am honored here to actually have our very first guest, who's somebody I know quite well, who I've been married to for the last 47 years, as our first guest, because she was the person that was so instrumental when I first took office in one of the biggest programs and one of the most successful programs that we've had. It's called the Crisis Intervention Training Program, and I want to let her talk about how she influenced me while before I became the sheriff and during a very tumultuous campaign, and why this was so important to her. So I want to welcome my wife, Ann Chapman. Thank you for being here today, Ann.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. And now I know when I first took office, or before I took office, it was a pretty rough campaign, as they all have been. And I know when that was going on, you had suffered some real family tragedies here with the loss of your dad, and you had problems with your sister, with her mental illness. And I know there were some things that happened in her life that you were very concerned about. And why don't you tell us a little bit about how you became involved in her life and her mental health problems and the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and what prompted you to try to encourage me to make crisis intervention training a staple of what we do here at the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office?
There's a lot in there. So my sister was an amazing, high-spirited, big sister. She was really fun. She was a social butterfly and had a lot of friends. But tragically, in her early 20s, began to experience symptoms, what ultimately became a severe mental illness. Symptoms like she developed anorexia. She couldn't keep track of things. She wouldn't show up to work and couldn't remember where she was driving to, almost like she had Alzheimer's, but she was early 20s, and she looked perfectly fine. But my parents she was the oldest of 7. I'm number 2. And we always struggled with, hoping she would get better and this medication would work, and ultimately it didn't happen. She went downhill. Fast forward 40 years, we were getting some kind of help for her, but there's just not a lot out there. And when my father, God love him, passed away in 2010, right before Mike ran, I started to panic. And a lot of families that deal with severe mental illness, drug addiction, alcoholism, understand that once their mother and father or their guardian passes, somebody has to step up to the plate and do the right thing. So I got involved with NAMI, I think, through one of the organizations in Montgomery County, Maryland, that I was involved with to help care for my sister.
Wasn't your dad, didn't he reach out to NAMI before he passed?
That's true. Dad had
and
made
that's
it.
Is that kind of what prompted you to get involved in NAMI, or how did that actually take place?
Dad was definitely involved and had friendships in that organization to try to care for Alice. He was so compassionate, so sweet. And we have a lot of other illnesses in our family like that too. So he was always taking care of somebody, not just my sister. And I was aware of that organization, but when he passed away, I had to learn more. I didn't know how to take care of somebody 24 hours a day that had that extreme of a disability. So I contacted them, and when we started meeting at the library here at Russ Library, the NAMI, the facilitators that were in charge, and I started going to the meetings, learning more about it. They gave us a big giant book that had all kinds of information in it, from medication to how to manage a crisis and all kinds of things. I learned about crisis intervention training in those meetings in NAMI, and I did it for 3 years until Alice just got too sick, and my mom got too sick. My brother, everybody was getting sick, so I was trying to run around trying to take care of everybody.
Well, I know you ultimately became a facilitator
Yeah.
in NAMI. I think the person
Yeah.
that was there had left, and then you kind of took over the reins there. And I think it was
Yeah.
when you were doing that that you had expressed to me, because this was while I was still in the process of running and wasn't sure what the outcome was going to be. I think you had gotten involved in NAMI and seeing other people that had similar types of problems. But I know that you realized that your sister had been treated kind of disparately where you all grew up in Maryland. And sometimes the police were really quite good to her. Sometimes they treated her like a criminal. There was no consistency in the way that they were handling her. And because of that, I know you had approached me and you said, hey, if you win the sheriff's office, you're going to have to make this a priority. And I was like, I didn't really know much about it. And then you had told me about this Memphis model.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that was an eye opener for me when we had that chapter, that class. I think we were teaching for like 3 months at a clip, and that chapter really jumped out at me. And I immediately went home and I said, hey, Mike, if you win this thing, and at that time I was thinking neither one of us knew a darn thing about politics or whether you were going to win or not. But I said, if you win this thing, I think that this would be a great thing to learn. Why? To help all the families in the county who are basically suffering in silence, because I can guarantee you most people do, because they don't know where to go, they don't know who to talk to. And that maybe you could implement that program. And then you asked me to explain it to you, and I did explain that the best that I could, the Memphis model. So none of this I created. It was all out of Memphis by, I believe, a sheriff. I can't remember the year that it was created, but whoever did it was
I think
amazing.
it had been about 25 years old at that point. So I think it had been around for a while, but it really wasn't used all that much. And I know when we talked about this, well, surprise, I win the election. Okay, so now I'm like, okay, I'm going to hold my, hold me to my word that I would do this. And we looked at exactly what this would entail. And I remember, and it really was quite complex. It wasn't just a matter of saying, okay, we're going to adopt this program and get it going. There were a whole lot of moving parts to it. And it really took us about a year to just get this program implemented. And I think about that all the people that were involved in this, and I'll let you go into that in just a second here, because I know these meetings were pretty exhaustive. And I know one of the commitments I made to you was that I'd like to get 25% of our people trained. So I felt like if we're all our people on patrol, that if you had 25% trained, if you did that, you would actually have somebody on every shift in the event that you had some sort of a call that involved crisis intervention or somebody having a mental health episode or breakdown or whatever, that we could send somebody there. But the problem with that was that if you're talking about something that happens in the eastern side of the county and you've got somebody that's in the western side of the county, it's going to take them 25 minutes to get there, and that's not really an ideal situation. But I told you, I said, hey, look, one of the issues I'm going to have is I'm just coming into the office. I'm just trying to get to know my people. I'm not so sure how this is going to fly with my people, because I started getting the hugs for thugs and your social worker kind of thing is what we were starting to get. And I felt like, well, let's try to get the program going with at least 25% of our people trained, because there are things that you have to do and you got to backfill positions. It's a 40-hour class. It's there's a whole lot to it. And then when you do that, you're taking people off the road. There was a whole lot of logistics that were involved in that. And so I thought 25% was actually a pretty good number, but I know you didn't. So go ahead.
I did not, because my first reaction was, why 25%? Why not 100% and beyond? I didn't understand why it's communication. We can't teach communication, how to communicate better with each other, whether it's in the family, whether it's within the family, or from a deputy to a family member in crisis, or the family member that's trying to manage it. You're teaching communication, right? So it's giving tools, extra tools in the toolbox for all of your deputies out there in the field. And I think that's, so you guys started heading in that direction, knowing that it was not going to happen overnight.
Well, we did, and you were a big part of how this started, because I can recall downstairs in our community room holding these meetings, okay?
Yeah.
And fortunately, my executive assistant, Karen, had pulled up the cross-systems mapping file for me just this morning, and I could not believe the amount of people that were part of it. There were 25 members of that committee that were able to kind of pull this.
We had like judges, we had representatives from, I think, Leesburg PD, and from the courts, and lawyers, and nurses, and doctors.
The Community Services Board. We even had
Community Services Board.
The Director of Mental Health was up here, Behavioral Health, from Richmond, Virginia. And it wasn't just one meeting that we had. There was a lot, and to try to get this program going. And we did, and we were able to get it going, pretty well. And, it was a struggle at first, but we got it going. And I had to certainly fight, because the law enforcement community, our enforcement, that's why we're called law enforcement, because we enforce the law. And I think what happens is people tend to forget that we do everything else. That's one of the things that we do. That's the primary function that we have. But we get called to like every kind of circumstances you could ever possibly imagine. And so when we go to these things, what we found is that we had to de-escalate. And one of the things, and it's kind of interesting, that happened, and I'm going to go after about 4 or 5 years on the job, after we had started this program, I did, because we got it in full swing in 2013. And that very year, I asked to get a number of times that we used our tasers to take somebody into custody, okay? Not thinking much about it. I was just kind of curious. I said, hey, let me ask you something, to our people that keep all these statistics that we do. I said, because we have to report that. That's a use of force, and every time we use force, we have to report that. So I found that in 2013, we had used our tasers 25 times. 44 times that year. 44 times that year. And I was like, wow, that seems like a lot, considering, we have one of the lowest crime rates, or we have the lowest crime rate in the entire area. Why are we using so much force to take people into custody? So then the next year, as people became trained in this, that number went down to 17, okay? And then that number went down the next year to 11, then it went down to 7, then it went down to like 4. And I think now we probably average, 4 times or less a year that we actually have to use our tasers. And we understand in law enforcement, there are some people that simply are not going to comply, or some people are going to be problematic for us. But what it does show you is that the crisis intervention training program worked. It worked so well that not only did we start training just our not just our law enforcement officers, but then the next thing you know, we got fire and rescue there, because they show up on scenes where people are having episodes and stuff like that. And then it was like, wow, okay. And then other people in the private sector, we start getting people from the private sector that are like, hey, wait a minute, we have issues like at our facility here, and we can have problems with that. What are we going to do to de-escalate these things? So it's not just a matter of people having a mental health episode, but it's a process by which people learn how to de-escalate, how to bring some sanity to a very sometimes very, very difficult and chaotic situation. So it really has gone in a direction that we wanted to. And then I know we had talked about this earlier. Other things, and we talked about people with disabilities, and we talked about, what was it, the Arc of Loudon?
The Arc of Loudon, they all participated in the CIT program as well, and obviously Leesburg PD, Purcellville PD.
So we wanted to have to have everybody that.
All your dispatchers, there's
Oh yeah, that's right.
and then
Dispatchers.
Arlington. So it's morphed from 25% to
100%. So
way over 100%
we actually
because
fulfilled
you're
your.
taking care of people.
We actually fulfilled your
other
dream
counties.
of 100%. And
Yeah.
it's not. Obviously, we have people that are coming on the job, so they get initial training in the academy. Okay, but they don't get the full 40 hours. Okay, well, we added on to that now, so you have like crisis intervention plus, I guess, and what we do is we go into, behavioral disabilities, that kind of thing, mental health disabilities.
There's so much autism, and there's like so many things that our law enforcement are called to do. I mean, I remember that situation in Frederick where that young man was in a movie theater.
Right.
And I forget exactly what his disability was, but he just wanted to watch the movie a second time.
Right.
And there was, I'm not sure if it was security in the theater or something.
I think it was an off-duty deputy that was providing security and was asked to have him removed from the theater. And I think that resulted in a struggle. And then the next thing you know.
And these are the kinds of things that wouldn't happen if you had training, because you could have simply let the poor young man watch the movie again.
Yeah, and these are the kinds of accidents that you can have when this happens, when you don't have the proper training.
Right.
I know when I look at the Community Services Board and mental health, and I've been on several calls out there where we've had people that that have held themselves with in a situation like in a house where they refuse to come out and that kind of stuff. And we've had mental health show up, and now we actually do. So think about this, okay? So think about where this program went. Since not only just getting people trained in crisis intervention, but one of the things that we actually expanded to was the CTAC, the crisis. What was it? The Crisis Intervention Stabilization Center. Okay, so what had happened was I had realized that with this, okay. When we would get these calls, these mental health calls, they take substantial amount of time, and we have to transport people to get an evaluation at the hospital. Okay, and that was taking our people away from their enforcement duties there on the road. And I thought, wow, is there a way that we can transfer custody of somebody and have them evaluated at this crisis intervention center? And then that way our folks can get back on the road, and who's ever at the Crisis Intervention Center can then take them to the hospital for a further evaluation or determine whether or not they needed to go, whether they needed to go for what is it, emergency custody order. And so we look at that, and so that worked for a while, and then what happened, there was a staffing issue with that. But if you look at over time, that kind of morphed into a co-responder model, okay, which became then a state-run, state law kind of a thing, where we're now working with in this co-responder capacity, okay? And but what was interesting about that is that even before that became a thing here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we experimented with that in advance of the co-responder. So we have our school resource officers that more or less have the summers off, but they don't. I mean, because they're doing other assignments and stuff. So we experimented with it one year, where we took our school resource officers and we put them in polo shirts like I'm wearing here, so they didn't look in any way militaristic, and they would ride with our deputies out there. Okay, so if they got a call for like a mental health incident, they would go, and not only would they go and try to help the deputies calm the situation down, but they would also provide information, through a QR code or a handout.
Yeah, that's important. We haven't talked about that yet, is the follow-up. That's a big deal. It's a huge deal, because families, otherwise, they're just free-falling, and you don't want that. No, you want the families to be able to manage after your deputy shows up and tries to resolve some of the situation. You have to be able to leave them with the resources so they can follow up, learn how to manage. And I believe your deputies do that. They follow up, see how they're doing, how else, I mean, it's amazing to me.
We do.
You were telling me about the blue envelope.
Right.
That is really amazing.
For folks that might have autism or Asperger's or don't respond normally, as you would expect, like on a traffic stop, for example, where they now put their license and their registration in, and it's called a blue envelope program. So if a deputy or a police officer walks up to the car and asks for your license or registration, they know instantly when the person hands the blue envelope, okay, this might be a person that's suffering some sort of a condition
Where
like
does
that.
somebody get a blue envelope
Oh,
from?
we just got to contact us. We have on all our stations.
All your stations?
Yeah, we can do that. And the other thing that you had mentioned before, working with the Arc Loudon and making sure that we were also addressing folks with all these with these potential mental health disabilities. So we've expanded it, and this is an example of that. And this is a very tangible example of that because we have the envelope. A deputy knows right away. Okay, wait a minute. So that way, and one of the things too, we're actually looking at whether or not to put like a magnet on the back of a car, so that even before they walk up to the car, they'll have an idea as to, okay, wait a minute, this is a person that I need to be aware as I'm walking up, because a lot of times, officers, deputies, they get the wrong cue on a traffic stop, and it can turn into a disaster. And
There's so many unknowns that your deputies have when you roll up on a car. I mean, when you were on the road, I always, every night you come in, a different shift every week.
right, yeah,
And you come in, we had the babies at home, and
right,
and you come in, and I knew you were home when you ripped off your bulletproof vest and put your gun away and everything. I was like, oh, good. You made it home safe tonight, one more night.
And then you'd ask me what the story was for that night, and I'd give you about 3 or 4 every single night. It's the one thing I got to say about this job is it's never boring, and it's one thing.
And you certainly didn't have all the equipment you have now. You had a giant walkie-talkie the size of a brick or something.
Yeah, we
and
did
you'd
that.
write your reports.
Handwrite.
Paper.
Now when these folks write a ticket, they just I don't know. I think they scan the license and it comes out like a receipt, like you're at Walmart or something.
Unbelievable.
It's
come a long way, baby.
Yeah. Well, the profession has, and what I like about what I see, and we try to be on the cutting edge. And I can tell you, this was a cutting edge thing when it first came out, because I can tell you, it wasn't met with a lot of fanfare. I think people were very suspicious. Who is this new sheriff? We thought we elected a law enforcer, and now he's a social worker. And
but you're serving the community.
Right.
It's just not about locking people up. I mean, sometimes you need to do that, but it's a big job. It's a very important job, and you never know what's coming next. And the families certainly don't know what's coming next, and that's the tough part of it. It's so certainly not a 9 to 5.
So well equipped with what we do, and I can remember, and this was actually, think about the incidents that happened, since then with George Floyd and all this other kind of stuff. We were like,
it's been crazy.
We were on the cutting edge when it was not a popular, it was not in vogue to have crisis intervention training. It was like, oh my God, what is wrong with this sheriff? Who does he think he is? And then the next thing you know, you start having these incidents that are happening in the public venue, and they're like, whoa, sheriff's office kind of ahead of the game on this thing, and we've always tried to be ahead of the game. And that's why we work so hard here to always connect with the community, because we have, and this is an example. Okay, so these podcasts that we're doing, and we really want to connect with our community. We want them to know exactly what we do, why we do it, and how they can help us make these decisions to make their lives safer and better. And there's nothing more important, I don't think, than that community connection. Just as an example, yesterday, we had the Faith Summit, the Houses of Worship Summit. And we had probably over 150 people there representing different houses of worship. And what I find here is that community engagement. And believe me, I take my shots on this kind of stuff as a sheriff. But the fact of the matter is our outreach, people appreciate it. When I'm talking to them and I look at the crowd when I say things and I'm getting the nods, they really do appreciate this connection. And this is something to not only do a crisis intervention training and check the box, but to actually take it a step farther and to look at, folks with mental health disabilities, to then not only train folks in the agency, but to go outside, to constantly keep up with what's going on in these areas so that we're ahead of the game, we're not falling behind. And honestly, if you're stagnant, you're falling behind. You've got to always be looking for the next thing. And I look at, like yesterday with the houses of worship, all the things that we do to try to help prevent things in this county. And every time we see something that happens nationally, sending our people out, whether it's a synagogue, whether it's a church, a mosque, whatever the case is, wherever you have any kind of an issue, this is the kind of stuff where we like to make sure
Get
that
ahead of it.
Get ahead of it.
It's just, I never thought to ever go to church on a Sunday or synagogue and have to
No, I
see
know,
police
it's-
cars and law enforcement and security, but here we are. We have
No,
to deal with it.
It's pretty
That's the way
amazing.
it is
And that was
now,
one of the things I said
unfortunately.
when I opened up the event
Crazy.
yesterday was like, it's a shame we even have to be here to even talk about something like
It
this.
is. It's
But we're living in a world that's really unpredictable right now, and we have to really get out there, get in front of it, and do the best we can to kind of keep ahead of it, to keep our people safe. And what I found is that the community engagement and really getting the feedback that we get. I tell people all the time, I see all the complaints and questions that come in online every single day. We make sure that we assign them. And a lot of times I'll be the one that actually calls back, sends it. I mean, I had one yesterday. I sent an email right back to these folks as to what their concern was. And we want to make sure that we're including our community in everything that we do.
That's why I'm excited about the podcast, because you're going to hear from everybody, all your troops, everything that they do. Is each individual in this organization is super important. So I want to hear from everybody.
Well, that's
and
why
then everybody can learn. You know, most people don't know.
They don't know.
What
We're gonna
each
go into
individual-
that, you know, with what we do and how we do it. Get to know your LCSO, all of our different divisions. One of the things that we have, you know, we do our Citizens Police Academy, 11 weeks,
Yeah,
one night
that
a week.
everybody
And
loves.
the response that we get on that's always outstanding. People have no idea how much we do, and that's what this is to do.
Can inspire young people to join and to come learn and help serve their community. That's a big deal.
So we want to inspire, we want to educate, we want to communicate, and this is the first in a series of To Get to Know Your LCSO and why we do the things that we do. And I am so grateful that you were able to make it here this morning and be part of our very first podcast here. I think we got a lot to look forward, and I think people are going to be quite surprised at what we do, how we do it, and the amount that we do, and the community that we support, and the community how they support us, and why we're so successful at not only keeping our crime down, but just our overall community engagement. So, Ann, I want to thank you for being here this morning. I think this was a good start to our podcast series, and we'll see where it all goes.
It's been a lot of fun. It's been fun. I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody within the organization and then outside of the community. Everybody's got a great story and a great, they're great service to the community. So we want to hear from everybody. That'd be great. Awesome.
Well, thanks for being here, and I know maybe we'll get you back here as
welcome.
well after we kind of go the full circuit here. We'll get you on back. So thanks for being here, and I appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Very good.